Okay, so it looks like we are live. All right, so welcome to another edition of our Facebook Live event. This time we are going to be talking about pet wellness awareness. I do want to apologize for having to cancel last week, but we ended up having a pet come in who was going to have emergency surgery, and so we felt that was a little more important and pressing at the moment than talking to all you lovely people. So we did reschedule, and then in the meantime, I happened to get my yearly laryngitis. So it seems to happen to me every fall. I get a little bit of a nasal drip down the back of my throat, and it tries to take out my voice. So we do have to kind of deal with that. I will attempt to speak clearly, slowly, and to the best of my abilities, but my voice is going to sound a little bit weird. It sounds way worse than it feels, I assure you. I do not feel as bad as my voice would imply. However, if you have trouble understanding me, that's completely understandable. So feel free to ask me to repeat anything or back up, anything like that, if it's not clear. So as I said, we're going to talk about pet wellness, okay? This time of year, we get a lot of distractions in our lives. We need to get ready for the holidays. We need to get ready for family to visit again. Everyone's making up for last year, and everyone wants to visit everybody under the sun. And so our pets, a lot of time, get kind of set off and, okay, well, we got to get to them, but we'll get to them in a little bit, okay? And so we're just trying to refocus and keep in mind everything with them. Something is coming on here. All right. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. I always kind of start with some basic questions, okay? And if anybody who's watching, you can definitely dictate which way the conversation will go. Otherwise, I'll just kind of talk about some basic things, the most common questions that we see and things like that. So first question we'll kind of start with today. What does a wellness check entail? Okay, so what do we do when you want to bring your pet in for a wellness check? So a wellness check would involve a full physical exam. So looking at everything on the outside of your pet. We want to listen to the heart. We want to listen to the lungs. We want to make sure that they're breathing comfortably at a normal pace. We want to make sure we don't see any different swellings, different areas that are hot versus cold compared to another area that isn't supposed to be. A lot of people, there's a misconception about a nose being wet. Your nose can be wet or it can be dry. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're sick or not. The consistent thing I have seen is that pretty much all sick pets do have dry noses. However, just because your pet has a dry nose does not mean it's sick. So it's almost like a square and a rectangle relationship, okay? So all squares are rectangles, but rectangles are not squares, okay? So kind of the same thing. Pretty much every pet that doesn't feel good will have a dry nose, but not all dry noses don't feel well, okay? So we kind of get a look at that. We look at basic posture, looking to make sure we've got enough strength going on. As our pets get older, you'll start to see them get weak in certain areas. Most notably in our big dogs, their hips will start to get some arthritis and they'll have a hard time standing up. So we want to watch and see, are they placing their feet well? Are they walking good? Are they happy? Are they responding? Are they nice and hydrated? Have they been drinking enough? So kind of looking at everything we can see from the outside, make sure they don't have a fever, make sure they don't have fleas, don't have ticks, parasites, anything like that. And then another portion that is starting to be more and more incorporated into the wellness exam is also some blood work. So I just talked about kind of the outward physical exam that we do, looking at the outside of the pet. Wellness blood work is where you basically do the same thing looking on the inside of the pet. So you look at the liver, you look at the kidneys, you look at the sugar levels, the proteins, the electrolytes, you look at the red blood cells, the white blood cells, the pancreatic levels, all of that, to get an idea of, all right, so on the outside everything's looking pretty good. How is it working on the inside? Is there any area that we might want to keep an eye on? One of the really awesome things with wellness blood work is that it's repeated. So you get to learn what the normal is for that particular patient. So let's say we have a kitty cat and he comes in, and his kidney values, they're still within normal, but they're on a little bit of the higher side of normal, which could mean that maybe it's the early signs that something's starting, or it's the way that he just likes to be. So let's take this same kitty cat, and let's take this blood work result of kidney values within normal, but on the relatively high side, and let's go back, the last 3 years. Okay, let's assume that we've run wellness blood work on him for the past 3 years. If his kidney values have been slowly increasing over the past 3 years, and this becomes not just a point in time, not just one data point, but it becomes a trend. And so that tells us, is that something more that we need to look at, that we might want to think about? If we take this same kitty cat and we go back and we look at our wellness blood work over the past 3 years, we look at this kidney value that's on the high side of normal, and we go, okay, well, it's really not any higher than it's been for the past 3 years. This cat just likes to live a little bit on the higher side of normal for his kidneys. So that's normal for him. So knowing that, then we can go, okay, we don't need to worry about it. We don't even need to question it, and we don't need to think about it anymore. We'll keep an eye on it, and if it starts to creep up any higher, then we'll worry. Or for some reason, if it starts to go down, which would also be something interesting, then we'll look more into that. Maybe run a urinalysis to see about functionality and things like that. So there's a lot that we can do. And the big benefit behind wellness blood work, while it does give you a snapshot in time and tells you most likely that everything right at this moment is fine, the big benefit of it is the trending. Okay, seeing what is normal for this pet, where are our values going or not going. With all of that information, how is he looking on the outside? If we are worried that his kidney values are creeping up, is he still able to compensate well? Do we notice anything on the outside physically? That's going to adjust how aggressively we need to go about treating this or not treating it. We can talk about a lot more options. The earlier that you find an issue, the more options there are available for you to decide how aggressively you do or do not want to treat. And then you can also, knowledge is power. So you can decide, okay, when we know this disease is starting to progress, and I know I keep going back to my kidney example with cats, but cats have a lot of kidney problems. So we notice these kidney values start creeping up. Okay, so what do I want to do? Where's my limit? Okay, do I want to switch foods? Because that's easy, because my cat will probably eat that. A lot of people will do that. You can switch to a kidney-friendly diet. You don't really need to change your usual routines within your household or anything. Do I want to try to give my cat some pills? Do I want to put them on some supplements? And then, or because he seems to be doing fine now, is this something I'm just going to keep in the back of my mind and know that, okay, well, with kidney problems in cats, we'll start to notice them using the litter box more. We'll start to notice larger urine piles at home in the litter box, drinking a lot more, because the kidneys aren't able to filter. They're not able to concentrate the urine, and so you're going to get larger puddles of urination. You're going to see them drinking a lot more because the water's just coming in and then going out. Okay, well, I've seen those signs now. Because I knew to look for them, I'm able to catch them early. So now is when I want to intervene. I know I had that conversation. I decided that that's where my point is. Depending on how much preventative medicine or proactive medicine or anything like that you want to do will kind of determine when you start those interventions. And then you can also talk more about, and you have longer to think about how this will progress, so you can decide how far you want to go in the end. And I think that that's the real benefit. So what I see a lot that comes into the clinic is I see a lot of the pet that had maybe been acting a little off but then seemed fine, so they didn't think about it, and it was kind of on and off, and now by the time it comes through my door, it's very sick, and I run blood work, and it doesn't look good, and I have to have a horrible conversation and tell people that, well, where we are right now, you really only have 2 options, okay? And it's always a surprise, and I hate the surprise, because it's difficult to explain that, no, this wasn't something that just happened yesterday. This is something that has been slowly progressing on the inside of your cat for years. But we just noticed it yesterday because it got to the point where he couldn't compensate. It got to the point where the other systems in his body couldn't make up for the inefficiency of the one system. And so then you see all the clinical signs, and it looks like it progresses really fast. And it's very hard for us as humans to process it that fast because we love our pets very much. And if we know that this is going to progress and we know what to look for, it's a lot easier to deal with, it's a lot easier to process, and we already kind of know what decisions we need to make in the heat of the moment when it's very emotional. So I think that's probably the biggest benefit that I've seen from wellness blood work. Is the wellness blood work going to keep your cat from getting kidney disease? No. Your cat will probably still get kidney disease if it was going to. What it will do is it will help us to be able to tell you sooner while there's more options and have time, more time to think about how we want to approach this, to think about how we want to talk about this and go about what we want to do, okay, to keep our pet healthy and happy for as long as possible. How often should my dog or cat have a wellness check? So we typically recommend a wellness check once a year. I like doing that. It helps them. It's just kind of like going to the dentist in a way. So if you only ever went to the dentist when your tooth hurt, you're going to really hate the dentist, right? Because every time you go, they've got to do something to fix it. If, you go to the dentist every 6 months or every year, or whatever your insurance will allow you to do, most of the time you go there for just a simple cleaning. And so it's really nice and easy. You get to sit in the chair, you get to relax, kind of snooze for a little bit with that warm light on your face, and they get your teeth nice and clean for you. And then it also helps them, again, to find things earlier on and to give you a heads up. Oh, hey, maybe don't brush so hard. Maybe come and, are you brushing your teeth more often? Maybe you shouldn't floss so much. So there's a lot of benefits, a lot of health benefits to having that regular checkup, to picking up on the subtle signs that the professionals are trained to pick up on. So I don't pick up on a lot of my own dental work because I'm not trained to. I just brush my teeth every night and call it good. So I rely on my dentist to tell me what I need to do. So it's kind of the same thing. So bringing your pet into the animal hospital for that regular wellness checkup isn't going to allow us to pick up on those subtle signs that you're not expected to pick up on at home. So don't feel like you're a bad owner when you don't pick that up. You're just not trained to do that. What is the benefit of frequent wellness exams? I've kind of covered that. It helps us to explain what's going on, helps us to talk and have more conversations about what to expect in your particular pet, because everybody has a weak spot. I've talked about this before when we've talked about the benefits or pitfalls of certain breeds, okay? So there's every breed, every species has their weak point, their point that's going to fail, but you don't know what that point is. You don't know which system it is of yours that is your weak system, okay? But there is always the weakest link, right? So it's going to allow us to figure out what is this animal's weakest link, what do we expect with that weak of a link, and what can we do to help them to compensate for it, okay? Other things I would say benefits is not only looking from the animal side, also looking from the human side. So we see a lot of parasites here. We see a lot of fleas. We see a lot of ticks. We see a lot of lice. We see a lot of worms, most notably tapeworms, as well as rounds and whips and hooks, okay? So a lot of those parasites that I just listed off, humans can get as well. So ticks, when they get done having a meal on your animal, they have no qualms about coming off and having a meal on you. When you have worms, particularly hookworms, roundworms, those humans can pick up as well. And I was just handed a lodging, so I'm going to see if that helps me. So give me 1 second. Alright, so hopefully this will help. So you can get those as well. Most notably hookworms. Their other name is plumber's itch because they can go in through your skin. So you don't necessarily have to eat them in order to pick them up. I talked about ticks. Lice is species specific, so that's something nice. But if one cat in your household has lice, it will give it to literally everybody else in the household that is a cat. So it's very contagious that way. And then the other one that I mentioned was fleas. Well, fleas cannot live off of people. They can bite us, and it is very unpleasant. It is very itchy, and it's just miserable. Okay, so nobody wants fleas. Even though your blood won't populate more fleas in your house, and if you have no animals at all, your fleas will eventually die. Nobody wants to get bit by fleas for that long. So, let's get rid of the fleas. All right? Is it safe to use Neosporin on my pet? So, yes, it is. Neosporin is safe to use on your pet. It is a topical triple antibiotic ointment. I'm not the biggest fan of Neosporin in the world, mostly because some pets do find it irritating on the skin. I don't think it's a bad one, and I don't think it's going to hurt your pet, but I have seen when people apply it, sometimes it actually makes them lick more or itch more instead of less, which is the whole purpose of it, right? So that's the only thing I would say with Neosporin. It's completely safe. If they decide to eat it, it will taste bad, but it will not hurt them. But I have seen it increase licking and chewing as opposed to decreasing it. So just kind of watch that. If you do decide to put it on your pet, you want to make sure that they do leave it alone. Because if you put it on and they immediately start licking and chewing, it's going to completely negate the effects. That's why we don't necessarily carry it here. And we do prescribe a lot of ointments and things to put on. The ones that we carry here to put on, they tend to leave alone a little bit better than the Neosporin. But so that's kind of the difference in ointments. But is it safe? Yeah, absolutely. It's not going to hurt them. It'll be fine. Is there a connection between pet aging and pet health? Well, yes. That's almost like asking, is there a connection between human aging and human health? The older you get, the different health concerns you're going to have. The older your pet gets, the different health concerns we're going to have for your pet. So our wellness and our preventative is going to change depending on the age of your pet versus the age of you. Kind of the same thing there. Give me 1 second here. Sorry. All right. So sorry, I just had to take care of that very quick. We have a little bit of a resident with us that's not very happy to be in his cage, and I find him very distracting. And I don't know if you guys can hear him or not in the background, but if you can, I'm sure that's very annoying as well. So we're trying to see if we can get someone to take him out. All right. So where were we? Pet aging and pet health. Yes. So as you age, you look for different things. As your pet ages, you look for different things as well. Okay. So it would kind of alter a lot of things based off of that. I mentioned the wellness blood work when we first started this whole wellness talk. So wellness blood work will become a lot more important the older your pet gets, because the chances of them having something or trending with something is going to increase the older your pet gets. The chances of them developing arthritis is going to happen a lot more as the older they get. So the more they've used those joints, the more likely they are to have arthritis. Okay? And what can we do to help with that? We can do a lot. So the earlier we start, the more we can do, and the longer they can use those joints. We can do joint supplements. We can do anti-inflammatories. There are some physical exercises we can do. We can do acupuncture to help as well, to get the body on board. So these are all things we can do. The more that you move your joints, the longer that they're going to last. So the longer that you're going to be comfortable, and the longer your pet's going to be healthy and able to use them. If you wait until your pet has a lot of trouble even standing up, then while we can do anti-inflammatories and all of that, it's going to be very difficult for us to really extend the amount of time that they have, because once those joints start to fuse, which is what the body is trying to do when it lays down arthritis, you never really get the mobility back. So you have to really kind of maintain that mobility to extend the useful life of those joints. So There's an old adage that I love because it's very true in the animal world. If you don't use it, you lose it. Okay, so if you stop using your one hip joint because it hurts, your body's like, okay, I knew it. We didn't really need it. So it's going to lay down more of that fibrous scar tissue. It's going to lay down more of that arthritic bone faster because you're not breaking up those adhesions. You're not moving it. You're not sending those other signals through the nervous system to tell your body that, no, this is supposed to move. It actually works better if we move. So all of that is very important to maintain mobility, to maintain usefulness, and to maintain health. So definitely huge connection between health and aging and what we look for and what we do. Why is monitoring and controlling the weight of my pet important? So weight gain is associated with a lot of different illnesses and diseases. Most notably, we'll go ahead and we'll start with cats. Most common thing we see in obese cats is diabetes. A lot of cats develop diabetes when they're overweight, especially if they've been overweight for a decent amount of time. One of the very unique things about cats is if you catch their diabetes before it gets too bad, if you can get them to lose weight, a lot of them will revert back to a non-insulin dependent state, which is awesome. So then we just need to keep them on a restricted diet, and you don't have to poke your cat with a needle twice a day. You will have to in the beginning when they first get diagnosed, but if you can get them to lose weight, you can maintain them on a proper diet. There's a few cats that we can actually revert back. Now, I can tell you from experience, we can revert these cats back, and then if you get lax and you buy Kibbles and Bits, again, for your cat, or Meow Mix, I think is the cat version of Kibbles and Bits for your kitty cat, and you just let them go back to eating whatever they want, a lot of them do become diabetic again. So diabetes in cats is something that is very closely related to their weight, because I have seen cats be diabetic, lose weight, no longer be diabetic, gain weight, and become diabetic again. So definitely a lot going on there. The other issues that we see with our overweight cats includes constipation is a huge one. So when your cat gets to a certain size, I almost think that their abdominal muscles just aren't able to contract as well. And with that, they're not able to eliminate their stool as well because they can't posture as well. And so then the colon stretches, and then it gets harder to get the colon to signal down and contract well enough, and you get these very horribly constipated and obstipated cats. And unfortunately, once they've gotten to the point where they have chronic constipation issues, a lot of times even getting them to lose weight at that point, some of them always lifelong struggle with constipation issues. So I know we have several cats that are on a daily dose of Miralax just to kind of help them go, or lactulose. They're on special diets to kind of keep everything moving. They do have some prescription diets out there that are supposed to help with that as well. And it's very sad in my opinion, because the whole reason that we have to fight this problem in these cats lifelong is honestly because they just got too large and things just started not working right. We also see a lot of arthritic issues with these guys, which of course is not going to help their weight gain. And then we do see, I think more often than necessarily diagnosed, is we will see some disc issues or back issues in these overweight cats, which I think accentuates the issue with their colon, because all of those nerves are going to come down and innervate the colon from that lower back, from that spine area right back there. And when that's not able to fire as well because it has increased pressure, okay, or a disc issue in that lower back, it's only going to accentuate the problem and make it even worse. And then it's painful to move, so then they don't want to move. So then they eat more because they don't feel good, and then they move less because they don't feel good, and then they get bigger. So it becomes this horrible cycle in these poor kitties. And we do see a lot of very overweight cats that once they get to a certain weight, they just really start to balloon up. And then the last issue I would say I'll cover with our overweight kitties is a lot of skin issues. So it gets to the point where they just can't bend and groom themselves like they need to. And so they get a lot of skin fold overgrowth, bacteria, all of that, a vast majority of them we end up needing to shave once or twice a year just to get them cleaned up. We've had a couple where it's been pretty bad, especially around the anus area. In the skin folds, they get a really nasty dermatitis, and it's very red and it's very sore. And so we do try to clean them up as we can and give them some ointments to calm that down. But it's difficult because it really is just primarily the problem is a weight issue. It's not usually based from the thyroid in cats. The thyroid issue that cats tend to get is a hyperthyroid, or what's known as Graves' disease in the human medicine world. And that's actually where the metabolism goes too fast. So if your cat was hyperthyroid, they would be eating all the time and skinny as a rail. So this is kind of the opposite of that. And unfortunately in cats, we can't usually point to a thyroid problem for their weight gain. Usually for obese cats, it's our fault because we just leave the food out all the time for them. And we don't get them exercise because they're indoor house cats and they're just not that motivated individually to go work out. So using the thyroid as kind of a little bit of sequela, we're going to move to dogs. A lot of times our obese dogs do have a thyroid problem. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. Because the thyroid problem that dogs get is a hypothyroid problem or a low thyroid. Your thyroid controls your metabolism in your body. And so if it's low, you're going to gain weight. So these are our dogs who... A lot of people measure out their dog's food a lot more. You are measuring out that food and getting a very small amount and then keep gaining weight every single day. And you just don't know why. You've tried every weight loss plan in the books and it just doesn't work. It might actually be a thyroid issue in your dog. Issues that we see with obesity in our dogs is dogs also do become diabetic. It's not as common as cats, but we do have a decent number of diabetic dogs here at the clinic. Additionally, what we see more of a problem with our overweight dogs is disc disease issues, particularly in our dachshunds. Okay, so they're going to slip a disc a lot more likely when they're overweight, and then they can potentially get paralyzed in their hind end or all four. But that it happens a lot more often in our overweight dachshunds than in our in-shape dachshunds. Like as round is the shape, but I should say in our ideal body condition dachshunds. They're much less likely to have back issues. Arthritic issues is a big thing. There was one study that was conducted for labs in particular, where they fed labs a restricted diet, where they measured the food out from the times that they were adults. And then there was the free choice diet, which actually wasn't even free choice. It was where they took 1.5 times the restricted diet that they determined for this other section of the study for these dogs, and so the dogs in that group were a little bit more overweight. So you had dogs in one group that were ideal weight because their food was being measured out at an appropriate level, and you had dogs that were a little bit overweight but not morbidly obese, just a little bit overweight. And they followed them out to the end of their life to see what that would do for the dogs. And it was found that the dogs that were overweight died on average 2 to 4 years earlier than the dogs that were maintained in an ideal weight. And the number one reason for putting the dog down was weakness in the hind end or arthritis. They just couldn't stand up anymore. So we do know that hip dysplasia is a thing in our dogs. There is also just simply hip arthritis. Okay, they get arthritis and it's worsened by being overweight. And it will take years off the life of your pet, particularly in your larger breed dogs, if they get overweight and those arthritis starts to build up in their hips. In your little breed dogs, you don't see that happen as much, but that's because they're easy to pick up. You're not going to pick up your 100-pound lab and take them in and out of the house or up and down the stairs or on and off the couch with you. Okay, it's just not practical. That dog has got to be able to get himself up and walk out to go to the bathroom. And that was the number one reason that those dogs were euthanized. So that kind of gives you an idea of how much of an impact you can make by keeping your pet at an ideal weight and in shape from that study. I do really love that study. So we talked about thyroid, we talked about arthritis, we talked about disc issues with dogs. Do we see the same skin issues, dermatitis issues with dogs that are overweight? Yes, not as commonly, but it does happen. Most people don't let their dogs get that overweight. It would be, I've seen a few, but Usually for them to get overweight to the point where they are completely unable to groom themselves, it takes a lot longer for a dog to get there than a cat. And then we've talked about diabetes as well. So those are definitely things that we do see with all of them too. So weight does play a huge difference in age and quality of life and length of life of your pet. So definitely keep that in mind. And then the last question I'm going to cover, since we don't seem to be getting really much today, and I think it's because we had to reschedule, is since grooming is important, how often should I bathe my pet? How often you need to bathe your pet, and I actually do get this question quite a lot. It really depends on how clean you want your household and how dirty your pet is. So my dog gets a bath basically whenever she gets really, really dirty. If she decides to roll in something dead or get sprayed by a skunk or anything like that. I usually just wipe paws with a towel when she comes in and out when they get muddy. So I would say on average my dog gets bathed once or twice a year. Okay, it's not a problem. With other breeds of dogs, or if you like your house to stay very clean, it's not uncommon for people to bathe, monthly or every 6 weeks. There are several breeds out there that need to go see a groomer, and so they do need bathed monthly or every 6 weeks. Some people like to keep their house very, very clean, and they like to own messy labs who get very messy. And so those dogs get bathed a lot. My recommendation is try not to bathe your pet more often than once a week. If you bathe your pet more often than once a week, there's usually a medical reason if you're using medicated shampoo. But if you're just bathing for general cleanliness, once a week, if you do more than that with your basic shampoos, you're going to really dry out that skin and you're going to really cause a lot of problems. So for your basic average dog, I wouldn't say more often than once a week with a gentle shampoo. If you feel like your dog's too dirty to do just that infrequently, in between stages, just don't use soap. Just kind of hose him off and try to make sure if you're bathing very regularly that you pick something very gentle. Our favorite for gentle bathing, especially for frequent gentle bathing, is a product called Highlight. It's spelled Hylyt, and we like it because it really seems not to dry out the skin as much as a lot of other products out there. Some of the most drying products out there that I've seen would be Dawn Dish Soap, which is popular, and then also any of your flea or tick shampoos. Those tend to really take a lot of the oils out of the skin, and that takes a toll after a little while. The skin gets very fragile. You get a lot of flaking and scaling, and then you feel like your pet's even dirtier because they're basically snowing inside, and it increases the amount of shedding that they do when their skin gets really dry. So if you're bathing to try to keep your house clean, if you bathe too often, you're actually going to make it a little bit worse. So with that, I hope that kind of helps answer some questions about pet wellness, kind of basic things that we can do to keep our pets healthy, why we recommend doing wellness exams. As I mentioned, just to kind of recap, there's a lot of things that we can do early on. There's a lot of options. There's a lot of discussions that we can have. But the later we catch an issue with your pet, the less we're able to talk about, the shorter the discussion, and usually the sadder it is. And those aren't the talks that I really like to have. So, again, I want to apologize for having to cancel last week. I also want to apologize for my voice. I'm sure this wasn't the most pleasant thing for any of you to listen to. And I want to thank you for bearing with me this evening as we tried to continue to cover our topics together. I want to thank everybody here at the clinic for allowing me the chance to do this, to give me the time to talk to you lovely people and to answer questions from our community and try to increase education out there. And then, so some relevant stuff to kind of talk about. Next month, we're going to be talking about pet cancer. So next month is Pet Cancer Awareness Month. Pet cancer is something we actually see a lot. Our dogs and cats are living longer and longer, just like people, and if you live long enough, you'll get cancer. So we'll talk about that next month, and we can talk about what we do for our pets with cancer. Sometimes we can do more than you would think. Sometimes we can't do a lot. It just kind of depends. So we'll dive more into that next month for that. We do have a blog post, so feel free to check out our blog. It kind of runs through it. We try to post for what our topics are that month to try to help answer the common questions that we get asked all the time. And with that also, we do have a TikTok channel as well, and we try to post happy videos and stuff. And then we're also working on a little bit of an educational series as well for our TikTok channel. So try to keep an eye on that and stay tuned. Thank you for watching again, and I hope you all have a great night.